Welcome to the Hey Chaplain podcast. My name is Jared Altick, and I'm a chaplain with the police department. As a patrol chaplain, my goal is to help officers make it to retirement and beyond as healthy as they can possibly be. This podcast has the same goal. So on Hey Chaplain, you'll hear from dispatchers and federal agents, sheriffs and U.S. Marshals, as well as the occasional patrol officer from my hometown of Kansas City. From the LAPD to Scotland Yard, the guests on Hey Chaplain shared their own wisdom so that police officers everywhere can survive and thrive. A chaplain is not exactly a morale officer, but it's kind of close. I'm deeply concerned about the hearts and minds of my officers and how beaten down they may feel. After the last several years of relentless negativity about law enforcement, I find myself yearning for a voice that's not just positive, but one that can be resolute and strong in the face of adversity. So when I heard Dexter Pitts talk about personal responsibility and not letting negative voices redefine who and what you are, that was just what the doctor ordered. Dexter is a cop from Louisville, Kentucky. He's a combat veteran and has a wide variety of law enforcement experience. But what sets Dexter apart is that when he saw riots burning down his city, he left a job in a peaceful small town to go back and put on riot gear to stand with his fellow brothers and sisters in blue. Dexter has faced all kinds of adversity in his life, which we talk about, including family tragedy, racism, and the ongoing argument of what it means to be a cop in America. Dexter's not afraid to speak his mind, and people hate him for it. But I bet you're going to love this guy. Here's Dexter Pitts. Hello, Dexter. How are you today?
Hey, Jared, I'm doing good. How you doing, sir?
I am doing well. I'm so excited to get to talk to you. I have read your book. I've got it sitting here on my desk. It's dog-eared, and there's Post-it flags and underline. I really, really enjoyed your book.
Well, I'll tell you, thank you so much for reaching out to me, and thank you for reading my life story. Anytime anybody takes an interest in anything I've done in this world, especially after what we've gone through in the last few years with the police officers being under fire, I don't take it for granted. Even though I'm one of those cops that have been in policing so long now, to where you walk into a store, somebody's like, "I didn't do it." You used to get upset about that.
Right.
We're in a time now where it's like, "Oh, thank you for wanting to talk to me and joke with me and be nice."
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So can you tell me, kind of give me the 30,000 foot view of your law enforcement career? What kind of things you've been involved in? Where have you worked?
Yeah. So I started my law enforcement career in 2009 with the Louisville Metro Police Department. And I was a patrol officer there for 3 years. Then I got the dream job that I always wanted. I got selected by the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force while I was a police officer to be on their task force. And so I worked on with them for almost 2 years. And by the time that was up, it was time for me to go back to patrol. So I went back to patrolling West Louisville, which is the hood, for those that don't know. And so I did that for another couple years. Then I transferred to the downtown area patrol in Louisville, which was probably the best job I ever had on the police department. I pretty much walk around, kiss babies, and shake hands with people downtown, ride four-wheelers and bikes, and get to go all the free events that everybody else get to pay for. And so it was an awesome job. Freaking loved it. And best schedule. My wife always thought it was unfair. She was like, nobody should be this happy to go to work. So it was an absolute blessing. But I started to get the itch to go federal because after my time in the military, I always said I wanted to be a federal agent. And so I had applied for the United States Border Patrol, I believe once in 2016, didn't make the cutoff with the test for the Spanish portion because, go figure, not a lot of black guys from Kentucky speak Spanish. So, and so Trump gets in office and he makes it where if you are prior military and current law enforcement, that you don't have to take the Spanish test. So I was able to do all the other testing, pass that, and I got accepted to the United States Border Patrol Academy. And I was part of Border Patrol Class 1110, and I graduated from there in April. And I worked on the border for about 6 months, and I realized this job is awful. And they say money does not bring happiness, and I learned that the hard way. I was making the most money I've ever made, and I was also the most miserable I've ever been. And so for me, I decided, well, I'm going to go back to policing, but I really like Arizona. So I get hired by a small police department in Arizona called Sarita, and they bring me on. They're treating me good, but it's just something's missing. And it's just not the same as what I remember policing as. But around this time, the riots in Louisville started happening due to Breonna Taylor and the George Floyd incident.
Yeah.
So while this is going on, I'm at home at my house in Arizona, and I'm watching my old police station, the downtown area patrol office, get destroyed and a rock thrown through the window. And I look at my wife like, we got to go back. I can't let this happen on my watch. And so I called my old police department, and they're like, you want to come back here? I'm like, yes, I want to come home. So like, all right, then we'll sign you up. And I do go through the hiring process. And I believe it was on June 15th, 2020, where I swore back into the Louisville Metro Police Department. And so I go through the riots on 2020 and 2021, through all that. And at this time, I realized I'm happy to be home. But unfortunately, the police department that I left was not the same police department that I went to after. I mean, when you throw in politics and all this other stuff and command changes, it was just a different place. And it broke my heart. And I made the decision this past November to leave again. But I'm still in Louisville. I'm just with a smaller police department now. And I'm just a officer on night patrol in my little small peaceful part of Louisville now. So that's pretty much my career.
A lot of variety in what you did. Be able to do the federal agent thing. You were able to do a federal task force, but also local policing of different kinds and in different settings. And so that's a good wide variety of experience. And I feel bad. I should have started with asking about your military experience, because you're a wounded combat veteran.
Yes, sir. That's correct.
What was your MOS? What were you doing in the military?
I'm the only MOS that ever mattered in the military. 11 Bravo Infantry. Sorry to all you people that aren't infantry. You all exist to support us. Let me stop.
That's awesome.
But we appreciate supply and the people that sign the checks and the people that move, that make the food. So, but yeah, I was a 10th Mountain Division, Alpha Company 214. And just like everybody else from my generation, after watching the towers go down, I was inspired to serve. Yeah. My father served for 20 years. And so I decided I was going to serve. And I got to Fort Drum when was that? I got there around November 2003. Mm-hmm. And I was going to Iraq by June of 2004. And I had just come back from leave, my 2 weeks leave around November of 2004. And rolling into the new year on January 2nd of 2005, we were in Abu Ghraib, and I got hit by an IED. And I definitely know that the Lord spared me and the lives of my brothers. But I took a brunt of the blast from 2155 artillery shells that was literally direct up under my butt while I was sitting in the Humvee. And so I got a shattered left arm. I mean, I've had multiple surgeries. And I think 13 at this point, and so much other crap that inspired from that. But I never let it slow me down. So
I don't know if I understood, even reading through your story, you were outside the Humvee just a moment before. And if you'd stayed outside, that would have killed you.
Yes, sir. It would have killed every last one of us. And that's one thing that I always ask God, like, they say you're not supposed to ask God why, but I always ask God, like, why? Like, why are we still here? Because I don't know what the trigger guy was doing, if he was sleeping, preoccupied.
So he had the chance to kill you and your friends outside the Humvee, but then you get in, you're sitting on an IED and you don't know it. And you get in the vehicle and it blew up right under you and did some pretty serious damage to your was it your left arm?
Yes, sir. Left arm. Yeah, it's pretty much. I tell people it's stuck in a 90-degree angle almost. So, people always tell when they were watching the riots and protests, they were like, "We know it's Dexter. We could tell by that walk and this awkward swing of that left arm." Like,
really, yeah.
Oh yeah.
So how did that work? Getting through, the academy or whatever, getting ready to go into law enforcement with an injury that was that severe. I mean, describe for me the amount you were able to do. I mean, you could exercise with that arm. How functional were you when you started your law enforcement career?
In my mind, I was very functional. Like I could do everything they asked of me except put my hand behind my head and interlock my fingers to do sit-ups, which almost caused me the job because they said they had to talk to the state certification board because this guy got hurt in the war. And I'm like, man, I'm sitting here thinking like, God, I don't want to be stuck as a janitor for the rest of my life. I really want to be a law enforcement officer. Not that there's anything wrong with being a janitor. It just wasn't my calling, but they approved me. And I just told myself that like, if I get in the academy, I'm going to show out and do the best I can. And that's what I did. Like I'm not a PT stud anymore, but I just, I never gave up, and I would do my push-ups as best I could.
Right.
So, and they understood that, hey, this guy's got a disability. And I mean, it was the same when I went to the Border Patrol Academy, and they were just looking at my arm. So the best thing about Border Patrol Academy, it's very much like a military boot camp. You can roll up on the bus, and they come on the bus. Yeah, get off the bus. Everybody get off the bus. So I'm sitting there in line, like standing at attention, and my left arm, it's hanging awkwardly. And there's a Border Patrol cadre comes up, straighten that arm out. You straighten that arm out, trainee. I'm like, sir, as straight as it goes, sir. What's wrong with your arm? I got blown up in Iraq, sir. So he's acting all tough, and he comes back later, and he's like, hey, thank you for your service. And I was like, oh, so play the game.
Is there anything like on patrol that injury still affects you, or are you just good at working around it?
I'm just good at working around it. And the thing that always has bothered me for 13 years, it was if I need to draw my weapon in my right hand, I'm right-handed, but I also need to be able to key up on my microphone to tell the radio, hey, be advised, I got like two at gunpoint. Yeah. It's kind of hard because I can't get my hand all the way up. So I try to position my mic kind of lower to where I can speak into it, and I can hit the button to get the little chirp. If not, I'd be in trouble, because I don't want to have to transition. I don't want to have to transition to my weak hand with my gun and then hit my radio. I want to just keep my gun in my strong hand where it's at, and not have to fumble with the radio. So I try my best, but I've had no issues in 13 years, thank God.
That's awesome. So like defensive tactics training, that kind of stuff. You probably use your size to your advantage. You're a pretty big guy, right?
Yeah, I try to, but I've learned that size doesn't always matter either. So I try to use my mouth more than anything to where I don't have to fight people. But
smart cop. That's right. That's awesome.
Salty veteran.
Yeah. So you have this incredible story that you've laid out in your book about growing up and, reaching into adulthood, going to the military, and eventually into law enforcement. And all the way through that story, I wasn't even just a couple chapters in, and I thought, man, this guy is talking about his identity, who he thinks he is, and the different voices that are telling him good or bad, because you had great influences in some areas and then some pretty negative ones in other areas. I'm like, this book's going to be about identity. And sure enough, it got all the way to the end. No spoilers, but the end, that's like the last thing you leave us with, is talking about the different influences and whether or not you listen to them. And so I'd kind of like to ask you some questions about that. And in your early life, maybe, what were some of the negative voices, some of the negative influences that you heard maybe earlier in your life?
So the negative influences I heard early in my life were, as I spoke about in my book, growing up dark skinned and in the military, that was never a thing for me. Color was not really a thing discussed in my family, despite my family being from Mississippi in the 1960s. And both my parents grew up picking cotton, but growing up in the military is almost a utopia because it's just a hodgepodge of different people. Yeah. But it wasn't until my dad retired and we moved to the town of Radcliffe, Kentucky. And then I started being around other kids who weren't necessarily military. And then all of a sudden my skin color comes into play. And then I start being targeted by other black kids for being so dark skinned. And it was so weird to me. And I was like, but I can't help it on a dark skin. Let's just be friends. And there's the torture and torment that they put upon me day in and day out because I was dark skinned. But I'm like, but you're black as well. But you're blacker than us. So it was a complete. It's hard to explain because I never saw it coming. I didn't know that people could be so cruel, especially to other people that look like them. But it was just, it tortured my mind day in and day out. And also, I'll say another kind of a negative influence in my life, I explained this in the book, was that my mom grew up in Mississippi and she was dark skinned and she learned to bleach her skin when she was younger because light skinned people had it better then. And I always knew my mom was light skinned, but I remember seeing a picture of my mother when she was younger, and I was like, how'd your skin get lighter? And she told me about this bleaching cream she used, and I thought that was going to be the key to life, having lighter skin. So my mom would say things like, boy, come out from outside in that sun. You're already dark enough. You don't need to get any darker. But everybody would say, oh my God, what a horrible mother. It's not that my mother was a horrible mother. She was a great mother. She was just doing what she knew to do because she knew how it was growing up being dark skinned. Yeah. So she didn't want that for me. That's what that was.
Before she passed, did she ever talk explicitly about her upbringing? Did she ever say that she was bullied like you were?
No, but I started putting the pieces together as I got older. My mom never Mrs. growing up for her in Mississippi was very traumatic. I mean, she was molested. I mean, then abuse in the marriage. I mean, she had a rough childhood. Whenever I would tell people we were from Mississippi, she's like, "Don't you ever tell nobody we're from Mississippi."
Really?
She was ashamed of where she was from because she had so much trauma and scars. And unbeknownst to her, she had a hard life. And what people don't realize is what we do sometimes is we put our traumas off on other people. So, for example, people say with the policing right now in the Black community, like, no, we got to bridge this gap. We got to bridge this gap. I'm like, there's a gap to bridge. But what people don't understand is you are trying to bridge a gap that has been passed down in the Black community since slavery. And people, family members like that are super old are going to be telling the younger family members, you can't trust the police. You can't trust white people.
Yeah.
And that's something that has been pushed down for hundreds of years. And you're not going to make a simple TikTok video and get on social media and sing and dance and do some cool dances with people in the Black community and think that's going to bridge the gap. There has been a mistrust for so many years.
Yeah, multi-generational.
Multi-generational. Yeah. And I tell people I hate it and it's unfortunate, but that's the truth. And I mean, it takes time. The problem didn't develop, it took almost 300-400 years to develop. And it's going to take a lot more time probably to undo all that.
Yeah. Both the description of your bullying, how you were treated by other kids growing up, that's one of the best descriptions of bullying I think I've ever read. I feel like every school resource officer needs to read this. Anyone who's been through it themselves needs to read this. I mean, I just felt that was profound. I wasn't expecting to read about your childhood, and it was well done.
Well, I appreciate it, but that's one thing I put in my book was, the average person can't identify with being a police officer, going on patrol, being in special forces, or being an Army Ranger, or being in combat. But what we can all identify with is struggle, no matter who you are, how much money you come from, what color you are, how rich mommy and daddy are. If you're from a political family, it don't matter. To struggle is to be human. That is the human story. Yeah. And that's just part of my struggle. And that's my struggle. But I know that my struggle, a lot of people can identify with it because, I mean, that's pretty much everything we have going on in America now. We're having an identity crisis. Yes. Everybody just wants to fit in and be like everybody else. But I tell people all the time, man, God did not create you to be a photocopy of everybody else. He created you to be you and you be unique.
That's excellent. You went through this stuff during your childhood, and then you move into adulthood, and there was a new negative voice.
Yeah. So for me, it was after I kind of got out of the military, and the biggest thing I tell people is when you get out of the military, you're kind of lost and you're in transition. Because when you're in the military, you have a tribe, and it goes along with Maslow hierarchy of needs. Mm-hmm. We all want to belong. We need to belong to a group. So when I got out of the military, I no longer had that core group of people around me. So I was in search of a new tribe. And you're desperate to belong. You'll do anything to fit in. So right after I got out of the military, I did an HBO documentary with James Gandolfini called Live Day Memories Home from Iraq. Mm-hmm. And that spun into me getting selected to be a part of Spike Lee's movie Miracle at St. Anna. Mm-hmm. So I flew to Italy with this all Black group of actors from Spike Lee. And if you all know who Spike Lee is, he's not a bad man, but he has some views that are pretty extreme and pro-Black. And I'm like, right. So this is my first time in my life. I've been around Black people, but this was a different caliber of Black people, like Black excellence, power to the people, all stuff I was not brought up in. And so for me, seeing all these Black guys that accepted me for who I am, and I would tell them, how I grew up being made fun of because I was dark skinned. And they were like, that's the white man that put that into people's minds. They brainwash these people, brother. You got the skin color of a king from from the motherland. And it just felt so good to be embraced for being Black. And I was like, man, this is my new tribe. This is it. This is who I'm supposed to be. And so I kind of took on going to the far left and to the extreme of things. And that's when I started getting into the whole, Black extremism and, pro-Black stuff. And we didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us. Right. But it was so weird because that was never my upbringing. The things they were talking about with evil white people and all this stuff, that never happened to me. But what I was doing was taking on their perceptions and their views on life and taking it on as my own struggle when none of that was my struggle. But that was just because I wanted to be accepted. I wanted to be a part of the tribe. And I was like, well, I'm going to be a part of this tribe.
It was an attractive message. It was an attractive message to you. Yeah.
Oh, it was awesome. And then the power, Spike Lee's and his people, hey, man, you moved to New York City, get into acting, we're going to take care of you. We're family. And I was just like, man, I got so engulfed and inflamed in this world. And it just carried me away. Like, I never saw things as black and white. But now all of a sudden it was like everything was about being black and none of this is my fault. But at the same time, I also knew that there was some truth in this because my mom growing up in Mississippi, I knew when I started studying slavery and the effects of it, like slavery's over, but I told you there's still ghosts from the past that linger.
Sure.
One of those is with the black community, dark skin versus light skin. You have a slave master that owns a plantation. It's like him and his 10 kids, but he has 200 slaves. He realizes I can't let these Negroes get together, plot on me and take over. So I have to find a way to keep them divided. So he decided I would just, put this divide, light skin versus dark skin. The field Negroes hated the house Negroes.
Yeah.
And they thought they were better. And then I realized as I was doing my studying, it kind of came to my mind that I'm a product of this system because, man, my mom grew up in that, feeling that because she was dark skinned, she wasn't as good as the other people. So she wanted to be light skinned. And it all starts to make sense. And then at that point in time, I'm like, well, it makes sense. The white man divided us and, this is not my fault. And at that point, I had found my scapegoat for life. It was the evil white man that I had never met, but for some odd reason, it was the black kids on the bus making fun of me. But I passed the buck from them to the evil white man because we all need a boogeyman and a scapegoat.
Yeah.
And I had found mine.
What was the problem with that? Why didn't you adopt that and stay with that mindset for the rest of your adulthood?
Because it did not benefit me. All I was doing was taking the blame off of myself and putting the blame on people who had never done nothing to me. It's so easy to, look at somebody and say, these people are bad, but but it's so much harder to look in the mirror and say, it's not these people, it's me. And so I just realized in my life, as I kept going through life, like my life was so messed up and I'm just blaming white people and the white man. And I'm like, this is really not benefiting me. And then it was like when I turned 28 and I had lost everything. I lost my mom to suicide, and I was losing my career. I found out my wife at the time was cheating on me. Man, I fell to rock bottom. I fell to the position where only God can save me and use me. And it was when I was down there, I realized and looked at the passage that says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face many trials and tribulation, because the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And I was just reading that Bible verse and I was just thinking about my life. And I'm like, I have nobody to blame but myself. I literally created the prison that I was in. And I was blaming everybody else for putting me in that prison. And that's when I kind of started making my way around and started studying more and just really seeing life for what it was. And that the truth was there was no evil white boogeyman. I was the boogeyman.
Yeah. Down in the place where we live, we have to take responsibility for our own actions. And if you do that, things start getting better for you, at least in some ways. Because I'm also sure that if you start identifying yourself as a Christian, as a conservative, that kind of thing, there's also people who are going to hate you for that.
Oh, absolutely. And I remember when I wasn't really aware that there was a such thing as black conservatives. So I knew once I started making little mentions here and there, black people on the police department would look at me like, what, Negro? Like, what you just said? And I tell people, police departments are great places. They're probably the most diverse and most accepting people, but there are always small segments of people within the police department that want you to conform. And there were some black officers that would hear me say stuff like, I remember one black officer told me, it's like I was a lost soul. And I had one black officer's wife reach out to me in a text thread. It was after the shooting in Louisiana, the Alton Sterling shooting, where I think he was trying to get his gun and the officer shot him in the head. She reached out to me in a message and she said, just remember when you're out of uniform, you're just another black man. You're not that special. And I was just like, wow, because I had an opinion that did not go with the flow of the black community. I was just like, man, I thought I escaped all that, putting all that behind me. And this was just another battle. And then I never knew what a coon was until I had a friend from high school that reached out to me after I said something on Facebook that was pro-police and law enforcement after the Alton Sterling shooting. He's like, I hope one of my West End come up there and shoot you in your face. Pardon me for cussing, Chaplain. That's what he said to me. And he was like, you cool. And I was like, and I looked it up. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And it was just a whole nother wave of people coming after you for refusing to toe the line.
Yeah. Talk to me about some of the positive voices. What were some of the either what people said or what people did that made a positive impression on you over the years?
So the positive influences were, for me, it was my sergeant. He was in the Marine Corps, Kevin Trees. I mentioned him in the book. Mm-hmm. And he had lost his leg and become an amputee after a motorcycle accident. So I remember I'm at work as a police officer, spiraling out of control, suicidal, putting myself and everybody I work with in danger. I was making traffic stops, doing what we call ghost stops, making traffic stops without calling off on them, because I was hoping that I could anger somebody enough, pull them over and get them to shoot and kill me. Yeah. So, my sergeant, he sees like me driving code 3, all these places, and going to clearing houses by myself. Then he
all the things you shouldn't do.
All the things you should never do as a cop. He was like, dude, what is wrong with you? I had an accidental discharge of my shotgun, and that's what set him off. He was like, you're a freaking 11 Bravo. You're a grunt. You've been to war. You know how to handle a weapon. What the hell is going on with you? Yeah. So I remember he pulled me aside, and I just kind of broke down and cried for the longest I had cried in a long time. And then so he takes me to our major Chris Defect, and these guys, man, these are 2 older white guys. And in my mind, everybody was telling me, you can't trust these white boys, man. They're going to put themselves before you every time. The moment they get a chance to get rid of you, they're going to get rid of your black. And here these guys came around me, held me, and were like, dude, what do you need? We know you're going through a hard time. 30 days, leave, no questions asked. Go take care of yourself, man. We're not going to fire you. We know you're a good cop. We know you're a good guy.
And you perceived that they genuinely meant that.
Oh, they absolutely did. Yeah. My major, man, he would, on weekends, like call me, like I'd be working, it's like, hey, come have some coffee with me. Then one day he invites me to his house to have dinner with his family. And I'm just sitting there like, man, these people really care about me. They don't care that I'm black. Yeah. That's never been a thing. They just know that I was a good dude and I was in a hard spot. And I mean, man, they just encouraged me, like, you're going to have a great career. You just got to get this divorce out from under you. You need to process your mom's suicide, which happened while I was on duty. So it was just that is what they saved not only my career, they spared my life. And they didn't do it because I was black. They did it because they were good people and they cared about their officers. Now, if I had come in with a bad reputation, like, man, this guy's a piece of crap, nobody likes him, surely they would have let me go. But that's not what they saw or seen in me. Yeah,
they certainly looked beyond the color of your skin.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Or even the situation you were in, just as far as, not operating at your best. You talk very transparently in the book, which kudos to you for being that honest and transparent about times where you didn't perform well and you didn't do well. And yet there were people who still loved you, still cared for you, still invested in you. And to me, I'm looking at it as a police chaplain, I'm thinking, man, that supervisor made all the difference, or your mother's influence, or other people that spoke to you at the right time to really make a difference, including your current wife. I've heard you say wonderful things about her too.
Oh, she's awesome.
Yeah.
I am not deserving.
It is a blessing to find a good woman. Absolutely. 100%. I have a lot of concern about officers who just get beaten down, and maybe it's from people they personally know. Maybe it's from watching too much media. But they just are so demoralized because of all the voices they hear. What would you say to them?
Man, I would say to those guys, one, be careful who you listen to. And the one thing I've always hated is that, listen to your elders. I'm like, sometimes our elders can be kind of fools and idiots. You have to take what an elder says. Yeah. Look at what that elder has produced in his time and in his career, and then make the judgment if you want to take this guy's advice. We all have a journey and a path to walk in life, and we can't base that journey and path and that walk in life based on somebody else's journey. Like, you have to find your own reason to become a police officer and stay in law enforcement. So the one thing that's bothered me recently is that so many guys have been quitting law enforcement, but they're making a spectacle of it. Like, oh yeah, screw this job in law enforcement, man. They had a guy in New York City, an NYPD officer that quit. He threw up the middle finger to this fallen memorial statue, and I'm just like, you're a turd, man. Like, okay. You got your retirement, you're done. But it's just like, dude, it takes courage to continue to do this job when you know the people that you are serving can't do nothing for you, and the people that you are serving don't want you there. But to get up and continue to put on the uniform and go back to work day in and day out, knowing that, the deck is stacked against you. And what I also tell people is, what is the Constitution worth to you?
Yeah.
Is it worth this job? Because if there's no law enforcement, guess what? There's nobody to help enforce the Constitution and uphold it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We need law enforcement officers. So I will never tell anybody, hey, don't join this profession. I would never let my kid become a cop. I would love if my kid became a cop because I know he's going to do the profession good and the country good and the community.
Yeah.
So you have to drown out all the negative voices. And my God, there's so many negative voices. Yeah. So one thing I like on social media, Lord knows I love my meme pages. My boys 10A, like in Poorly Made Police memes. I love these guys. But there's content that's so hilarious and funny. But at the same time, I tell people, like, you have to be careful what you digest because some of that negativity can get into you. Yeah. And then you start to perceive that stuff as reality. And, some of it is real. But at the same time, you have to look at why you're doing this job and why you want to continue doing this job. It can't be because, mama or daddy wants you to be a cop. You have to continue to keep doing this job because you believe that this is what you were destined to do. Yeah. No other reason. If I was going to leave law enforcement, I would already been gone. People like, dude, you're crazy. Why are you still working? I'm 100% disabled. I don't need to work. The VA, I make plenty from the VA. I don't have to work. Yeah. But I believe in this profession and I believe in what we do. It is still noble. This is still a great job. Despite all the craziness that goes on, man, there's not a day I don't get up and I'm not glad to put on my uniform. Some days are definitely better than others, but at the end of the day, I still love this profession, and this profession is still worthy of all of our service and sacrifice.
Well, you have to be careful not to listen too much to the complainers, including your fellow cops, and because it's if they weren't griping, they wouldn't really be cops. I mean that's griping and complaining is pretty normal, but it's easier. I like to say it's easier to break an egg than to lay one. And you have a tendency to gripe and complain and tear things down without offering any solutions, without building anything yourself. And when a coworker is in that mode where they're just griping and complaining and tearing everything down, you're going to have to learn how to filter them out too, because that stuff can be contagious. And I just hate to see officers, leave a roll call, going out to a shift, and they're all beaten down and discouraged, and they're starting their day like that. But I wish that they could help each other be more positive and remember why they put on the uniform in the first place, because a lot of them do have those principles and those ideals and that passion, but it gets kind of beaten down by the negative influences.
And there's plenty of negative influences, Joe. I'm telling people, man, you could give a cop across the nation $1 million raise. You all going to make $1 million, but we're going to pay y'all in hundreds. There's going to be somebody, but why got to be in hundreds? Why can't I have mine in fives and tens? Yes. Why can't I have mine in 20s? That is the nature of law enforcement officers. We don't like change. We don't like stuff to change on us. We just don't. But we have to be so careful of those influences. And I tell people, you try to be the influencer, not the influencee.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to go down that negative road.
Absolutely. So let me ask you one last question. Who are you today, Dexter?
And I am still the same guy. I'm a father. I'm a husband, depending on how good of a husband, ask my wife, depending on the day. I'm still a law enforcement officer. I'm a veteran. I'm a man of God. I'm a Christian, not the best one. And I am a caring person, but I also realize that I'm a fallen being, but only through the grace of Jesus Christ that I am I'm undeserving of the grace he gives me, man. So I have my flaws and my faults, and I'm not afraid to admit those and tell people what those are, because, I'm just an average, ordinary, everyday guy, man, living a life that just so happened to wrote a book and has a podcast.
I just appreciate what you're saying. You're saying some things that are unpopular these days. People want scapegoats. People want to wallow in their misery. And you're saying, hey, go out there and live by these principles and do the right thing, even if it means moving back across the country to be put on the front lines of a riot. I think that's a pretty admirable position to take.
That's why I tell people the principles that drive my life are from my last name: personal responsibility, integrity, trustworthy, tenacious, and selfless service. Yeah. That's how I choose to live my life. And that's what I'm passing on to my kids. What chooses and what drives somebody else's life might be completely different. It doesn't have to be what my, principles are, but everybody needs a set of principles to guide them along the way. The Bible's good for that. I mean, you can listen to anybody. You can listen to Jocko, David Goggins. I'm just another dude, another voice out here. Take it or leave it, But I tell people, I'm not selling y'all anything. I just want to encourage people and let people know, one, you're not alone in your struggles. Two, it's okay to be who you are and have your own identity. You don't have to follow the crowd. You were not designed to follow the crowd because it's comfortable in the crowd. You're going to we love to live in echo chambers, man. We just want to hear, yeah, man, you own that lib. You own that conservative dude. That's always the easy part. But when you're not amongst the crowd and the crowd turns on you, that's when you got to start questioning, who am I and why are they turning on me? Yeah. So stand on your own principles, man. Find your own path in your own way.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much, Dexter. I sure appreciate it.
Of course, Chaplain. I appreciate you having me on, sir.
I'm really grateful to get to know Dexter. His boldness about who he is and what he believes is something that I find both refreshing and inspiring. At times it feels like the whole world is following a script of complete insanity that hates everything, always, and wants to burn it all down. But Dexter reminds me that I'm not the only one that feels alienated by that negativity. C.S. Lewis once said, "Friendship is born at that moment when one person says to another, 'What? You too? I thought I was the only one.'" So let's remind each other that some of us are still trying to protect and build up the places and people we love. Dexter's book and podcast are called I Am Pitts. Make sure you check out his Instagram at IamPitts1. I'll leave links in the show notes. On the next episode of Hey Chaplain.
As I was going through the messages, I got a call from Chad's father, and he said, "Do you know where Chad is? We have to find Chad. Something's wrong." And I think we had 14 cops maybe at that time, and I had a pretty good handle on what the schedule was. And I said, I think he's working today. Let me give him a call. I'll call you right back. So then when I hung up the phone, and my phone rang again, and it was one of my young police officers, and he said, "Chief, Chad's dead."
The views expressed here are the personal views of the host and our guest and do not necessarily represent the views of any law enforcement agency or its components. And if you have any ideas for the show or comments or suggestions, please feel free to email me at heychaplain44@gmail.com. There's a link in the show notes. You can also find Hey Chaplain on Facebook and Twitter, so please reach out to me. I'd like to meet you. If you like what you heard in this episode, please share it with a cop or someone who loves a cop. Thanks for listening to Hey Chaplain, and as always, pray for peace in our city.